What I just done read.
Hello, and welcome back again to What I Just Done Read, where we are going to be looking at another tome of forgotten lore. Lenore. Sorry. I suppose I should really say to those who are fortunate enough to be celebrating it, a happy Valentine's Day to all. This is, as I said, What I Just Unread, a book review show that aims to give a fair airing to books of all ages, not just those gracing the bestsellers or the new releases lists. Today's book actually is quite a recent book, and that is Winter Tales. See what they did there? And this is Animal Fables from Around the World for Folk of All Ages. Before we come to the book itself, just a couple of things. Just want to very quickly jump back into something from our last episode, which was on Coldheart Canyon. During the episode itself, if you haven't seen it, I did highlight a few things, a few discrepancies that I found or that I perceived between the blurb on the back of the book to the actual content of the narrative itself. As was pointed out to me after I'd finished shooting, it seemed a bit disingenuous to kind of lay the fault of the blurb's inaccuracies at the foot of the author and not at whatever staffer at the publishing house would have written the blurb. Just to explain that, obviously that was a schoolboy error on my part. Reason being that as a small publisher myself, with the books that we've produced, it's me that writes the blurb. So that was where my confusion was there, so I do apologise to Mr. Barker about that. Doesn't change anything that I say though, because I wouldn't be surprised if at the very least Barker wasn't aware of what the blurb contained. So I don't think it changes really anything that I said, but I just wanted to clarify that point before we go any further. And the other thing that I did forget to do was to take Coldheart Canyon off the list. So we're going to do that quickly now, get that out of the way. So here we go. So we're down the bottom here, Coldheart Canyon. And it's gone. Okay, so we can move on. As always, we will be starting with our word of the day. And the word today, actually I suppose is one that is kind of appropriate for the occasion, if you like. And it is callipygian, which is a wonderful word. Doesn't that just roll off the tongue? Ooh, callipygian.
1 hour later.
Sorry about that. Yes, callipygian. It's an early 19th century English word, which is the English equivalent of an older Greek word, callipygios, which means well-made or shapely buttocks. However you choose to include that in your own writing, whether you're planning some high art erotica or just a letter to readers' wives. So there, yeah, go take it, make it your own, and fondle it to your heart's content. Let's move on quickly, shall we? As I said, Winter Tales by Jackie Carriera. I'm sorry, Jackie, if I'm getting the pronunciation of your surname wrong. Whoosh, my bad. And her husband, AJ Dean. AJ and Jackie are friends, and this was really nice of them. Not only, obviously, to support me in reviewing the book, but also, oh, lovely. Thank you. Bit light on the bullet point biography on this one for these guys, but they have said that they're quite happy for me to quote liberally from the book itself. So from the front here, Jackie is an award-winning writer, musician and designer. She grew up in Hackney, East London, and also spent part of her early childhood in the old quarter of Lisbon in Portugal. These colourful, diverse cities and the human stories found within them have always been a big influence on both her writing and general view of the world. AJ Dean was born in Suffolk to two teachers of English and drama, and has loved languages and performing his whole life. His marriage to a writer and musician and their founding of Quirk House Theatre Company only deepened his interest in the exploration of storytelling in its myriad forms. Today, Jackie and AJ live in East Anglia with 2 cats and an increasing number of overstuffed bookcases. They will, of course, buy more bookcases as needed. That's just how they roll. So, we'll go to the blurb from the back here, just to give you a bit more of an idea of this book. The truths and wisdoms of these tales has been passed down for centuries, from generation to generation, often across different cultures and traditions. But always, the message of the stories remains intact. These animal-inspired tales have been researched, collected, and rewritten by Jackie and AJ. Read them, enjoy them, laugh or cry with them, but most of all, share them with each other. Suitable for humans and animals of all ages. And a little bit more at the bottom here, just about the company themselves. Quirkhouse Theatre Company was founded in 2014 in Suffolk, England by husband and wife team AJ and Jackie. These enchanting stories form the basis of the company's popular Winter Tales series of Christmas plays, which continue to delight audiences. I did ask AJ if he had any other anecdotes that he could give us about the book and about the inception of the book itself, and he did send me some stuff, so I'm going to have to read this out from what he messaged me very quickly. As we just established, the book itself and the stories that it contains was born out of a family show series that they did for Quirk House, which was Winter Tales, Winter Tales 2, Bigger, Funnier, Fairier, and Winter Tales 3, Revenge of the Storyteller, where a storyteller reads the tales and the humble players acted them out using lots of cheap props. To which he adds, Jackie loves making me do stuff that makes me look like an idiot. Seriously cheap props too, some with the Poundland price tags still on them, and at one point I even got some free cardboard crowns from Burger King. Yeah, so the book itself contains a total of 16 animal-based fables or tales. 11 are taken from the ancient world and 5 from the modern age. These all feature anthropomorphized animals who, by living up to their perceived dominant traits, teach us certain fundamental moral messages, like any great fable should. The authors have done a great job of drawing together a curious collection of tales. Most of them are ones that were new to me, which is always fantastic. Amongst the ancient stories, they have picked a number from arguably the greatest teller of fables of all, Aesop, but they've made the right call, I think, in only choosing 3 stories from him, and I think none of the ones that they've included are ones that I've ever heard of before, so that was really nice. The other 8 tales are a curious mix from some very far-flung places. So there's some stories from India, there's at least one from the Azores, and 2 or 3 from Native America as well. As I say, this makes up the bulk of the stories. There's obviously been sort of slimmer pickings for stories from the modern age, and at least 1 or 2 of them are original works by AJ and Jackie themselves. And I think a couple of them are, I hesitate to say real retellings of real-life events. Yet they're kind of retellings of things that might have happened. Like any good myth, you know, there's possibly an element of truth in them and have been adapted for the fable sort of genre. And interspersed amongst this are some really nice insights into the nature of story and the development and even the evolution of stories and the way stories are communicated amongst cultures and amongst people down the ages as well, which was really nice. But I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. Yeah, and these insights do really complement the stories themselves. They kind of speak to the nature and the power, if you like, of fables and how they are just as relevant today as they would have been when they were told around the fireside. With regards to the product itself, it's quite nice. It's a nice little book here. You know, it's a decent enough paperback. It's been produced locally by a printing service called Biddle's Books, who are based in King's Lynn. Aesthetically, it's quite pleasing. It's of a decent size. I like some of the things like the little motifs. I like the cover, like the little owl there on the cover is reproduced in various places. I like there, throughout the book, things like this. The font on it is, you know, pretty clear. Whether you're just casually absorbing the book or, say, if you're sight reading, for your kids. There were a couple of minor things about the product itself that I did want to mention, as much as I do appreciate, and as I say, I do like that kind of old world aesthetic. There's a couple of things that I did sort of think were worthy of note. And I should say, before I go any further with this, I'm simply talking about the physical product itself, the artifact. This is not in any way, shape or form designed to be disparaging to the print service or to the authors, but they are just things that I noted that, while they're not so much of an issue for me, other people might sort of see it differently. And I only mention this because it was something that cropped up to me as I was reading it. The setting of the text is quite small within the page, which does lead to a fair amount of wasted space around it. And while the typesetting is generally pretty good, because they've tried to fit it within that setting, it does mean that there are places where you might find the odd line or so where there's only like 4 or 5 words to a line, which can sort of break your flow as you're reading it. Also, to add to that, there are very deep sort of paragraph indents as well, which, for want of a better word, they could be construed as bloat, or just basically padding out the actual volume of the content to create a longer, larger work. Now, in one respect, that kind of works, because I should imagine that this book predominantly was aimed at younger readers. In that respect, it's quite nice, because it then actually provides a volume that's, especially for somebody who may have only just been starting to get more comfortable with reading on their own, it presents a volume that's less daunting or say even threatening, when it comes to sitting down and trying to read this on your own. My only concern is, as I say, a lot of the stories in here are very short. The majority of them are 3 to 4 pages. There's a couple, one in particular that I know that's is basically 1 page. I do wonder whether or not this could have been produced in a slimmer volume that would have still upheld the aesthetics of what this offers, that would have been more representative of the volume of content in here, which would have then also had the knock-on effect of saving paper, reducing both production costs, and also giving it the potential to have a lower cover cost, which could, again, work in its favour to help it shift more units. It's just something that I noticed. As I say, for me, I like it as an artifact. I think it's really nice. But, as I said, it didn't take me long to get through this. I was mostly reading it on my way to and from work, on the bus, and that journey is about 40 minutes, and it took me maybe 4, 5 bus journeys, and I was through it. So anybody, you could easily sit down and read this in an afternoon. I don't think if you'd have produced this slightly, as I say, in a slightly slimmer volume, it would have lost anything. That said, at the same time, I do appreciate that they have done it this way, because this has been done by a printing service as opposed to by a larger publishing house, who would probably have insisted on making it a slimmer volume because, like any big business, they're going to be wanting to save costs. So it's nice that they've had the freedom to produce it like this. But again, as I said, in the interests of fairness and trying to be objective with this, I thought it was something that I should bring up. Oh, and the only other thing about the product itself, and again, this would have been just a small thing. Each of the stories has an introduction before the actual story itself, just to add to the aesthetics of it. I think I'd have preferred if they'd have been differentiated slightly. If you'd have just put the introductions, I don't know, simply like in italics or something, just to differentiate them from the actual stories themselves. That, I think, was the other thing that I thought would have been quite nice. A great example of that is the Blackwater anthology, if you know that one. There's a great example of that in there, and I think that could have worked really well in Winter Tales. I have got a few more things to say about the book and about some of the stories themselves, but before I do that, I am going to go and do my eyes. So while I do that, where is it? There it is, there's the book. Why don't you spend a moment, get reflective, and fondle your own morals. Xadrum is more than just curious content on YouTube. We're also a small publishing house, with books covering a range of genres from 1940s pulp adventure to children's novels, and even a touch of the macabre for those who like their literature on the dark side. Our titles are available in both paperback and ebook formats. Ebooks are available on Amazon, but physical copies can only be bought exclusively through our website at xadrum.com. Jeff's got enough cash as it is, So why not help us little guys grow and thrive? Links can be found in our banner and in the description to all of our videos, and we look forward to helping you indulge your itch for escapism. That was quick, wasn't it? Yeah, I did think this one might not be the longest of one of these that we do, but that's fine. So yes, kind of further thoughts, and these will be more sort of generally on the book and on some of the stories that are in here as well. I do like this book, and I really do appreciate what the authors have set out to achieve with it. As I was reading it, irrespective of where I was reading it, it did very much evoke memories of my father reading the likes of the tales of Robin Hood, or more relevant, I suppose, would be things like the Juste stories by Kipling to myself and my brother when we were boys. And that's, those are things that I haven't thought about for a long time, and yet reading this kind of sort of just plucked those memories out, and that's really nice. That for me shows that the book has kind of succeeded in what it's trying to do with presenting a modern adaptation, or a modern presentation, if you like, of a classic prose style. Even more so because it is a modern publication. Even though some of the stories are quite old, the presentation and everything about it, for the modern reader, it's something that they can make their own. It's not like picking up as I said, like a mid-20th century edition of either the Juste stories or Aesop's fables, something that, an artifact that history that modern readers may feel a disconnect to. This was produced in 2023. I also liked the history, and again, that evolution of stories that is included in here as well, predominantly written by AJ. I found those parts both informative and inspirational as well. Especially appreciated there's a short passage that AJ's included about the approach to stories that he has, and some of his thoughts of that from the point of view of an actor, which was really nice, which is something I didn't expect to find in here, but then again I should have done. And reading that both as a performer myself and just as a reader, I thought that was really nice. What I also liked about that was I could really was by sort of putting myself in the mind of, again, what I think is really the target audience for this book is of a younger reader. And as a child reading this, especially if you'd had any kind of thoughts or aspirations for going into the performative arts, AJ kind of offers some really interesting insights from like a journeyman actor, if you like. And that for somebody who has yet to even begin to discover their own potential, I think is quite valuable. There's a lot to be learned from that, which I really liked and I really appreciated. Again, I'm a sucker for potential and potentiality, and anything that can give you a signpost on the road is worth its weight in gold. I would say that I do wish, and again this comes back to a little bit to what I was saying a moment ago, I wish there was more of it. That was my thing, and I think that's part of the reason why I was saying so much about the product. Sometimes when you're reading it, it feels like there's physically more to the book than there is volume-wise to the content. Again, that's the volume of the content, not the quality of the content. Yeah, that's kind of one of the main downsides I have for what's in here. I wish there was more of it. I know this is obviously the book of the show, if you like, but I'm sure that there are multiple stories that were passed over for the stage version, that it would have been perfectly acceptable to have included into this volume, just to give the reader a bit more, and also as well, from a purely monetary point of view, to give you a bit more value for money. I tend to do like a top 3 of these when it comes to anthologies and things like that, and I'll do the same here as well. I've picked 3 of the stories that I really, really liked. 1 from the modern age stories, and then 2 from the ancient world stories. So from the modern age ones, first of all, I was tempted initially to go with one of the stories in here, and it is kind of a modern legend, if you like, apparently based on a real event, but I don't know whether it's actually true or not, which is The Monkeys and the Ladder. I'm sure most people out there will know what I'm talking about. For those who don't, this is apparently an experiment that was conducted on 5 monkeys, and it's an experiment into social and societal conditioning, which again has been reproduced here as a fable. I was tempted by that one, but I'm actually going to go for the first of the modern age stories, which is actually written by Jackie herself, which is called About the Oyster. Again, this is a tiny one. This is the one I mentioned earlier that is a single page. This is an original story, but it is also adjacent to the ancient Swahili proverb, a smooth sea never made a skillful sailor. It's about realising that you have to take the rough with the smooth, basically. From the ancient stories, I did quite like The Fox and the Crow, which is a very simple tale, and it's one that teaches us about the dangers of both vanity and accepting flattery as well. It's well worth a look. But I think my favourite is the one that's entitled The Grateful Animals and the Ungrateful Man, which is listed as coming from India originally, and apparently, according to the book, was often recounted at banquets by no less a personage than Richard the Lionheart, having heard it somewhere during the Crusades. A wonderful story, and it's about the importance and the reciprocal power of just being kind. I really did like that one. So in case it wasn't obvious, I do recommend buying this book. While much of the content and even the format, as we've discussed, of the book harks back to older forms, the prose style itself is very much grounded in the 21st century, giving it a fresh and modern approach to a very ancient form of storytelling. I also appreciated that Jackie and AJ have clearly made an effort to keep the volume free of any political bias. Now, I only mention that, and to be perfectly honest, if I was reading this, say, 10-15 years ago, I wouldn't have even thought of it. Unfortunately, we increasingly live in a world where we are browbeaten into seeing and viewing everything from some kind of political lens. Something which anybody who's watched the show for a while will know that's something that I personally abhor as an escapist and somebody who likes to read for its entertainment value. But I think it's even more important here. I don't think I would have enjoyed this book as much if the moral messages in it had been deformed, shall we say, by or for any didactic reasons. Fables and the moral messages that they seek to impart are universal. At their core, they seek to teach us simply how to be a decent human being. And that's something that I think should be accessible and available to all. They are the foundation upon which you can then build whatever political or ideological identity that you choose to align with on top of. But they themselves should be exempt from that. And that's something that this book does really, really well. The stories are presented without agenda. That's something that I can only applaud the authors for. They've done a really good job with that. And I think this has the potential to be as timeless as the stories that it contains. So yes, I really do think that you should check this book out. There will be a link in the description below where you can pick up a copy, give it a look, and hopefully it will inspire them to produce another one. So we will just go to our eyes. Oh, so I don't forget this time. That's later. Yeah, sorry, eyes. So, we have gone with a 3i for the product. As I said, there was a few little things there that I was a bit iffy about, as I mentioned, but I've gone with a 3i. Not going to lie, a little bit of bias on my part here, not so much because I know the people who wrote the book, more because it's produced by a small printing service, not dissimilar to the one that I use for Xadrum. So, when it came to that, I was like, I can afford to give them a little bit of extra leeway compared to a more mainstream publishing house. So yeah, so 3i for that. But it gets a fully deserved 4i for the actual quality of the content. It's a really good book. Do check it out. And again, thank you, Jackie and AJ, for putting this together for us plebs to read. While I'm here, I will very quickly as well go to the list. So we're on to the newer part of the list, and we have Winter Tales. There we go. And that is now gone. Hopefully, much like winter itself. Unfortunately, I have no idea on what the forecast was from Punk's attorney Phil, even if that's actually happened yet. Hold on one second. Ooh, it's a boo, unfortunately. So stay wrapped up warm, people. And while you do so, we will have a look at what I'm going to be reading next. So we're going to be staying with the newer part of the list, and we're going to be staying with anthologies, partly because when I met the editor for the next book that we're going to be doing, I did say to him I'd try and have my review out by April, May time. So I've kind of sort of talked myself into a corner, if you will. So this one is going to be Eerie East Anglia. That's Fearful Tales of Field and Fen, edited by Edward Parnell, and published by the British Library. So it's going to be an interesting one, obviously, as I do live in Norfolk, in the heart of East Anglia. There's a few in here that I do recognise, so it's going to be an interesting one to read. If you'll excuse me, I'm going to hie me out into the wilds of Norfolk, because those cows are not going to tip themselves. Get thee gone. Sorry.